Welcome. Thank you so much for watching this webinar with us. We're excited to have you join. This is part of our series of student support groups that we're offering to students during the pandemic to connect and learn with one another and to start to heal from the trauma of the pandemic. This project is a collaboration between the Arizona Association for the Education of Young Children, AZAEYC, and our sister affiliate, the Southern Arizona for the Association for the Education of Young Children. As the two sister affiliates of NAYC, we work closely to support students and early childhood professionals across the state. My name is Dr. Eric Boucher. I'm the Chief Executive of AZAEYC, and I'd love to introduce some of my colleagues who are here with me today. Kelly, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm not on mute. Good morning, everyone. This is Kelly Larkin. I'm the Executive Director of Southern Arizona Association for the Education of Young Children. Good morning, and thank you for being with us.
Camille?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Camille Lacker-LaFaro, and I am the past president of the Arizona Association for the Education of Young Children. And happy Saturday morning.
Anne Marie?
Good morning, I am Anne Marie Marino, the Vice President of Professional Development at AZAEYC.
Thank you. Lisa?
So good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Cobb. I am the chair of the chapter of the Arizona Valley of the Sun, AZAEYC.
Great, thank you. And in just a moment, we'll introduce you to our special guest, Crystal. But we did want to let you know that this session is made possible thanks to funding from the Heising-Simons Foundation through the National Association for the Education of Young Children, NAEYC. We're so pleased to be able to partner with NAEYC to provide sessions that are really focused on equity and creating new forums or spaces where students can come together, talk with and learn with one another, and strengthen our ability to support each other during this challenging time, of course, and to be strong as we emerge from the pandemic. Switch slides here. We're excited to have our colleague, Crystal Sanford Brown, join us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Crystal and her experience. Crystal is the Vice President on the NAEYC Governing Board, and she recently retired as a seasoned early childhood advocate. Crystal continues to highlight the importance of quality early childhood education and strong quality environments for young children. Her career experiences include more than 16 years in higher education, serving in administration, as an adjunct faculty member in early childhood education, and as a mentor of young emerging leaders. Crystal is currently a doctoral candidate in higher education leadership at Central Michigan University. She holds 2 postmaster certificates in college teaching and higher education, a master in public administration, a bachelor in community development, and an associate in early childhood development. So please join us in welcoming our good colleague and friend, Crystal. Crystal, take it away.
Thank you. Sometimes I don't even recognize when I get an intro. It's like, who are they talking about? So thank you for that. And good morning again to everyone. And on behalf of the National Association for the Education of Young Children, NAEYC, I want to welcome you and to share. It's my privilege and it's also my honor to come before you and to share information and to have a dialogue. Today, I'm going to really just talk about openly bringing your authentic self to leadership with the intertwining of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So when I thought about what could I share with the recent early childhood education graduate students, I thought about all of the benefits that you've had with perhaps maybe your classroom materials having an inclusion of DEI, your recent textbooks, perhaps maybe including it, the abundance of professional development through the lens of DEI. And with those benefits, it's much different than when I was in school studying early childhood education. And I consider myself a lifetime student because although I have 6 college credentials, I would like more. But as a survivor of a lot of trauma, including child molestation, domestic abuse. I'm a survivor of ovarian cancer. I had workplace bullying. I knew that it was my time to leave the position and heal. And so with that, I recognized post-traumatic stress disorder, and I recognized that this month we highlight and we make awareness to children's mental health, because it's so very important for us to recognize, not judge, and to support not only our physical health, but our mental health. And so I have a nonprofit organization that supports young people who have experienced trauma, the adverse traumatic experiences, and so very important, especially for early childhood educators, to make sure that they are aware of ACEs. We never know unless we allow ourselves to be open to understanding the background, the history, and everyone has a story. So with that, I'm going to move forward. DEI and developmentally appropriate practice, and NACCE will be coming out with its 4th edition of DAP, and we'll have a DAP symposium coming up soon in June. So if you hadn't had a chance to take a look at that, please take a look at that and think about registering, because it's a phenomenal opportunity to dig deeper into understanding what we mean by being culturally and linguistically sensitive while we look at developmentally appropriate practices. So I state that help benefit the benefit that you've had by having DEI included in your recent coursework. And I say that with the hopes that you've allowed yourself to engage in the very sensitive and courageous conversations addressing DEI. Because what we have learned, especially during this pandemic, this COVID-19, is that while many of us in early childhood and related fields have known all along that there's been a lack of equity, unfortunately, I would say, fortunately, COVID has brought forth a lot of things that people didn't want to talk about, and it's made it in plain view that we must have these conversations. We must continue to have courageous conversations, even if we know they're going to be difficult to handle, even if we know we're going to hear terms that may make us uneasy. We must have these conversations, because if we don't, we're settling for things to remain the same, which helps no one. So I want to read you something that I felt was really poignant, and I shared it with my NACCE colleagues. It says, "We live more than once. They say that we live only once. I don't believe that's true. As we become different people, depending on what we go through. From the day that we arrive on earth, we grow, develop, and change. So how can we remain as one when nothing stays the same? Some people are enchanted by babies, seeing magic in all that they do. Of course, you also lived as a baby, but that's no longer you. Yesterday's you has gone away, but do not mourn for her or him, for you're all you can be today. She or he's just the boy or girl you were." So as we continue to look at change, I know that it can be difficult. It can bring about, again, post-traumatic stress or traumatic incidents that may have happened to your life that have been in a Pandora box that you haven't dealt with. And sometimes when things become so difficult for them to remain the same, change must occur. And that can be difficult for some people. So when you have the opportunity to attend higher education, you most likely become a higher level thinker. Plato's allegory of the cave. And if you haven't had a chance to read that, please take a moment to read it, because you've gone through this. The Plato's allegory of the cave describes what individuals experience once they remove themselves from a small, narrow view of being in the cave and with their back to the cave and only seeing individuals walk across and only seeing a small portion and not having a vision of things much higher and larger. So once you engage yourself in higher ed and you become a higher level thinker, you're no longer in Plato's cave. So your past view is going to be different than your current view. And sometimes people may not understand that. They may not agree with you, but hold on. Be proud of your thoughts. Be proud of the things that you've learned in early childhood that are new things that if you're working in a program and you bring them to the program and they say, we can't let children get their own glue. We can't let them play with scissors. We can't let them use paint or things like that. Oh, and definitely don't give them a hammer with nails. But you know differently. You know that children should be afforded those opportunities because, once again, you've engaged yourself in a higher level of thinking. Don't let anybody steal your flame and blow it out and make you think that that's crazy. That's that new stuff. We're not doing that. Yes, we do. We need to do those things. We need to give children opportunities. We need to let them have a choice. We need to offer them and listen to their thoughts because it's important. That's how we respect the children and we respect their families. We respect their beliefs. That's all a part, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this is a piece by Audre Lorde, and the last piece I read was an author unknown. I want to give credit where credit is due because that's not Crystal. So if I say it a couple of times, I may steal it, but I'm going to give credit. This one, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strengths in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. When others see the leader within, there is a leader within. Implicit biases. Now that's a term that I'm pretty sure that you've heard in your coursework, or you may have heard it in some professional development. We all have implicit biases. No one's excluded. There are moments when I say to myself, Crystal, you have it. You know what your biases are. You've addressed them, you recognize them, and you check them. Then I'll have an experience, and I'll give you an example. So recently I had met a friend at a restaurant and we were gonna have lunch. And there were a group of women of color who were just in front of us. And so the hostess said, you're with them, right? And I said, no, I'm with my friend here, who's a white male. And so again, it's like, okay, Crystal, don't overthink this. Maybe she was asking to make sure she had enough seating. Maybe she was not thinking, oh, because your skin reflects the rest of these women over here, that you must be with them, that you could not be with this guy. So I have to check myself and say, okay, don't overthink this. Perhaps maybe that's what's going on. But if it wasn't, I want to make sure that I handle the situation with character, professionalism, and with an understanding that that may be that person's experience. I can't put judgment on that because that may be their experience and I have to allow them to own it. Now, when you see implicit bias where someone, I call it intent versus impact. And I'll talk about that a little further on. One of the most things about equity and implicit biases is, again, like I said, recognizing them and ceasing them on working or moving forward. So when I talk about the intent versus impact, another example is like I didn't have anything else to do. I was an empty nester. All my adult children had moved on, and I was, in the home alone, working 10 to 12 hours on the college campus. And I decided I was going to take a part-time holiday employment. Never brought any money home because it was a clothing store. Like I really needed to work there. I didn't. And you may remember Carson's or Parisian, and they had different names to, depending on the locale around the United States. They're now closed. I think you can still purchase things online, but nevertheless, I worked for them. And I was only supposed to work during the holidays. It became where I was working like 20 to 25 hours a week beyond the holiday, because they said I was such a good salesperson. I could put and coordinate, attire and things like that. It's a gift my mom gave me. But, I love my accessories. So at that point, I needed to have said no, but I didn't because I enjoy the work. I'm a people person. So I'm at the register one day ringing up and some orders that I assisted someone. She and her husband, they were going to travel, and she wanted some ensembles, and so I assisted her. So while I'm ringing it up, she goes, "So is this your only employment?" I said, "No, I'm a college professor. I'm an administrator." And she says, "I knew that this could not be your only job because you speak so well." Implicit bias. Intent versus impact. I understood her intent in perhaps maybe giving me a compliment and perhaps stating her understanding of what she may have believed or experienced for an individual to be working in a department store or clothing area. And the impact came to me as, you couldn't speak that well for a Black person. So we have to check ourselves and make sure that our implicit biases are not demeaning. You need to make sure that if someone says, and we do it in a professional way, I understand that you perhaps maybe meant to give me a compliment, but my feelings are a little hurt. And it's not about having soft feelings or just, being not hard enough. I've had somebody tell me, take it like a duck and let it run off your back like, oil on a duck's back. No, we need to address what was stated, because again, that intent versus the impact. Sorry. If we don't check and acknowledge our biases, they can present themselves in your classroom and also in your teaching. You don't have to attack and tackle the entire 7-course meal when we talk about implicit biases at one time. Take a nugget at a time. But the objective here is to start recognizing that implicit biases is something that each one of us have by our experiences from engaging in our macro group, your much larger world experience, and your micro group, which may include your family, your friends, maybe, your social groups. Maybe some things that you may say within those groups are acceptable, but when you think of the much larger group, they may not be acceptable. So when we start working with our families, we need to allow children, again, to make those choices. Allow children to share their inputs. Respect the family's values. Years ago, when I coordinated on-campus children's centers for one of the largest community colleges in the state of Michigan, there were 5 children's centers, one on each one of our campuses. And so one particular day, I was off at a meeting at another campus. And this was during Dr. Seuss Appreciation Week. And so the kids were making green eggs and ham. And in the snack area, there was a list of the children who had dietary restrictions. The information was also in their information cards, which also were posted in the prep area, which children couldn't have milk, which children couldn't have pork, which children couldn't have this. So I returned to the center, and I'm a very engaged person. So I spent little time during the opening hours in my office. I would always stay a little later and handle my work, but I wanted to be engaged. I had student workers, I had staff, very highly paid staff. They were unionized, but I liked to be engaged. I didn't want the children to just see me as someone who sat in that office over there and didn't engage. So I came and they said, "Hi, Miss Crystal, we made green eggs and ham today." And I said, "Oh," and they said, "Oh, it was so good." In my absence, I always gave the lead teachers the option if a child was registered to attend on specific days, and if they were absent on those days, and if we had availability by census count to allow them to make up a day without additional pay, I gave them the option to make give the approval. Well, we had two children whose parent needed to come to campus for studying, or it was close to midterms or finals. And those children were there on a day that they typically would not attend. And on the day that purposely the schedule for the children to make green eggs and ham was scheduled on the day that these children who had dietary restrictions for pork were not typically in attendance. Well, when I asked the teachers, I said, "Did everybody have green eggs and ham?" They said yes. And my heart started beating real fast. And the two children who had dietary restrictions for no pork said, "And we had seconds." I told the staff, I said, "When their mom comes, please send her to my office. I would like to handle it." "You mean you're going to tell?" "Absolutely. Yes." And my two staff said, "Well, it's not like they're allergic to it." Again, we have to respect families. So when the mom came, I asked her to sit in my office. She had the children with her. And I shared with her what had occurred. Understandably, she was livid. And her kids said, "But Mom, we didn't have pork. We had ham." They were 3 and 4. Our job as the adults are to protect children for knowledge that they may not have at that point, that they could scaffold upon. The mom called the dad. The dad wanted to have a meeting with me. Now, I wasn't present, but because of my role in being the coordinator of the children's centers, when they called licensing, when the report was given, the only name that was listed on the report was my name. It was listed teacher A, teacher B, child A, child B, but Crystal Sanford Brown's name was listed on the licensing report. How do I feel about that? How do I feel about telling the mom the truth of what had happened, that there was a violation within their children's dietary restrictions? I would do it again because I would want someone to tell me the truth. And what happened with those teachers? One was a contract employee, and so she was no longer employed with the university or the institution, and the other one was transferred into a different position. I don't look at it as, why did I get blamed? I recognize my role. Could I have done something differently? Could I have gotten turkey ham? Could I, just to assure that everyone was covered. when I think about that situation and what I could have done differently, I think about some different things that I could have done, but I cannot take the responsibility for another adult's behavior. They have to own that. They have to own it. But as the professional, change has to occur. So maybe perhaps we wouldn't, um, maybe we wouldn't, use ham. Maybe we would just do the green eggs to make sure, or if we had some dietary restrictions with eggs, do something differently to make sure that all bases were covered. But again, I wouldn't lie about it. Don't lie about it. Incidents happen, incidents occur. Be truthful, be your authentic self, because can't be anybody else. All those other roles have been taken. So make sure that you are your authentic self and show up as your authentic self, even with those implicit biases that we have to check ourselves on. Each child on your list, each student deserves their name to be taken off of the list and to be treated as an individual. Get to know them. Get to know their families. Don't just treat them as child number 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Get to know them. They're people. They're real people. They're much more than a child that's listed in the dino room or the beer room or the tiger room. They're individuals. They're people. To my emergent leaders, what do I say to you as you have graduated from what I consider one of the best disciplines that you could have graduated from? Early childhood education is phenomenal. Don't let anybody cheapen that and said, well, you should have gone to elementary ed. You should. No. If you had the opportunity to get yourself credentialed in early childhood education, you can play a huge role in a child's development. Almost 90% of their brain is developed before they're 5. Think about that impact. Think about what you can assist in impacting and filling up that brain development for that child. It could be positive or it could be negative. We want you to be on the positive side because it's very important of what you put forth for children while they're sponging in all that information. So the better educated you are, the more you bring to your environment, your early childhood environments, all different environments. So if I were to ask you to give me a definition of the word GOAT, G-O-A-T, likely we may have different various responses. We may have, Crystal, it's an animal. It's a goat. Or we may have someone saying, that means greatest of all times. So you have to recognize the experiences that people will come with. We all have a suitcase of life. And in that suitcase are going to be some articles that you get from the DNA of your mom and your dad. And as you go along on this journey that we call life, you're going to pick up some other articles that are included in your suitcase. Some of them will be articles that will fit you very well. Won't be too tight. You won't look like a sausage in a biscuit. But there'll be some other articles that you may need to take out that may not fit you, that may not work for the character and the person that you want to be. So be very careful as you go along the way about those articles that you're going to include in that suitcase. And you may get someone say, leave yourself on the outside. Don't bring yourself into the classroom. Well, that's impossible. That's why we check. That's why we check our implicit biases. That's impossible. Once you realize who you are and the experience you bring forth, you're going to bring some of yourself in there. And it's going to be that suitcase. That's why it's so important that you have those compartments that you check to make sure in that suitcase it's not bursting with things that should not be in there. So I'm going to leave you with this. Sometimes life is defined by a single moment. Let it be today. Go boldly into direction of your dreams. Best wishes on your accomplishment. This is just the beginning. The early childhood education field offers so many options that extend beyond four walls. Do not limit yourself. Continue to enrich and remain abreast of current DAP standards. Please understand, because of your increased knowledge, you will never again align with those who only see the world through the small lining in the cave. As you are a citizen of your local municipality, your state, your country, and the world, continue to respect the differences in others as your global views become broader. Congratulations! Go out there and make a difference. Be the change you want to see. Best wishes to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Crystal. We really appreciate your words of wisdom for emerging leaders, helping us think about being our authentic selves, holding each other accountable for advancing equity in our classrooms and beyond, and really focusing on the importance of getting to know people's individual strengths and how that contributes to the vibrancy of our community. So please, everyone, join me in thanking Crystal again for her time and her perspective. If you're joining us for this recorded version of the webinar, we do want to share sort of the next steps. Please do stay connected with AZAYC, SAZAYC, and NAEYC for upcoming advocacy and engagement opportunities. If you're not a current member of NAEYC, we do encourage you to join. You would receive many benefits, of course, as an individual member, access to professional development, articles and publications, but also you'd be part of a larger movement who's working towards advancing equity in early childhood and making sure that all young children and families and educators are well supported and have the resources they need. If you are joining us for this webinar as a recorded self-paced option, we do invite you to take a moment to fill out a brief survey to tell us your feedback about your experience and to share any insights or ideas that you developed as part of your participation. You'll go to bit.ly/azstudentmay, bit.ly/AZ, lowercase student, capital M, May. It'll take you to a brief survey. It should take about 5 minutes or so, but please give us your feedback, share a little bit more about your experience with this session, and then you'll also be able to indicate if you're interested in sharing your own story as an early childhood student or a professional with our organizations, and we are working to amplify the voices of early childhood students and teachers, and especially our educators who are Black, Brown, and Indigenous. If you, once you complete the survey, you'll see a certificate link for 1 hour of professional development. So you click on it, download it, and that's yours to keep to show that you are working on thinking through advancing equity and about leadership in early childhood. If you include your Arizona Early Childhood Workforce Registry ID, we'll mark you as attended within about 10 business days. And we thank you so much for participating.